Thank you, Bill, and welcome all. I don't know about you, and I just said it to the Congressman and some of the assembled dignitaries with me that being with you today, a little more comfortable as far as temperatures than it was 10 years ago, but it is so much nicer to be here in 2012 compared to 2002. Would I be right? In terms of how you kind of see the situation, and this is a comfortable program full of reflection and really the reunion quality that Bill and Lori Arnold wanted it to have. And so I'm delighted to be in your company and just share a few thoughts and a few reflections, because as you well know, whether it's a high school reunion or a family reunion, you have the opportunity for these little chats and some of the reflections that really signify a successful reunion. So first, let me say it's wonderful to see all. I appreciate the fact that you're with us. This is a special place for all of us. As Bill mentioned, aside from the rescue and really the remarkable turn of events that visited this place right here, this site 10 years ago, for me, one of the really neat dynamics of it all is to see you. As I mentioned last night at the Friday evening gathering, that if you had told me many years ago when Tom Ridge and I began to travel the Commonwealth and talk about our vision of public service and our vision for Pennsylvania, that clear across the state, I'm from Bucks County in eastern Pennsylvania, that after all was said and done and my terms of service were finished, that I would have this special connection, this sense of affinity, this bond that you and I feel. I would have said you were crazy back then, but we do. We do feel that. And as I said to Bill weeks ago when we began to talk about this program and how this day would go, Bill, I'll be out. I don't know about you, friends, but having lived the 78 hours of the rescue and in later years watching other rescue attempts, that you develop a compulsion about what goes on when human beings rally and gather to try to effect a rescue. And so for me it meant, yes, I've got to get back here. I've got to see you. I've got to see the visitor center. And certainly at the outset here, let me ask you to put your hands together and recognize Bill and Lori Arnold and the leaders of the foundation who make this program and this visitor center possible. Bill and Lori, well done. And Lori is right there and kind of staying out of the limelight. Well, friends, just really two general thoughts, and very much consistent with Congressman Mark Kritz's observations. What occurred here is nothing short of remarkable. I look around and I see young and old. And to some extent, think about this. It's why you have a visitor center. It's why you think about what we do to create a destination here for visitors, so we can tell the whole world, and certainly proud Pennsylvanians, that we endeavored here and were successful. But really, if you're below the age of 14 or 15, you probably know very little about what happened here. And what happens in reunions? It's kind of a family hand-me-down moment. It's when you say, we're proud of Granddad, we're proud of Grandma, we're proud of the house they built, we're proud of the farm that they expanded, part of the business that they established. You reflect, and very pridefully. At this visitor center, for all who might visit, young and old, as Pennsylvanians, we say we are prideful. And we want you to know what happened here. Led by the ultimate engineer, the good Lord, who instilled in us the faith and the determination that we could be successful. Knowing that in past endeavors, and yes, unfortunately so, and distressingly so in other states, the rescue didn't turn out. And it was very fateful and defined by death. And you say to your young friends or those who visit, yet in Pennsylvania in 2002, we came together and we prevailed. And I do believe that faith had an awful lot to do with it, in the religious and spiritual sense. I mean, contemplate this. And I really think it's the upshot of what occurred here. The miners were not saved one time. Truth be known, they were saved 3 times. Take a look at that 6-inch air pipe marked by that white pipe over there. Just a short walk from here. That was successful. We introduced that oxygen-rich air hours after the miners were trapped. That notion, that approach, was only a thought. It had never been tried before. And it worked. The idea, if you could move fast enough with the right circumstances, and yes, hopefully the miners were not crushed, because that's often what happens in mine disasters. This was a water breach. We had our shot. And we sent it down, and it worked. In fact, the miners tapped 9 times, signaling in miners' code that we're all here and we'd love to come up, even though that wasn't said. Think about that. No one had tried it, and yet in the darkness, in the AM of that first day, right here, it came together. And I want to mention a number of people, not all by name. I do want to mention the people from Federal's UMSHA, from the Mine and Safety Administration, for their commitment and efforts and techniques and counsel. I want to mention Dave Hess, who was right here, who was the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Protection, who preceded me here, and Joe Spafoni, who was right here. And together, our units, state and federal, and I want to take a look behind me and see all the folks who are deployed, especially from Sipesville, really in the proud heritage of American humanitarianism, just responded quickly and came here to the Arnold Farm. And yes, conceived of the idea, let's try this. And we were successful. And the point being that on that night, against all odds, really kind of going against human nature to say they are probably goners, and we never believed that. We were confident with our best efforts we could find them and bring them up. It worked. And so for the first time, less than 7 hours after that water breach from the Saxman mine to the Q Creek mine, the miners will tell you that oxygen-rich air at 300 degrees was introduced to the cavern in which they found themselves. And how dramatic was it? Ask the miners, they're among you. Because when the carbon begins to fill that chamber, you cannot breathe. And your nose literally begins to shrink, and you're not hydrated. And it is, that's what they were facing. And that's the kind of story that must be shared with the world. We endeavored, and we succeeded. And for the first time, they were saved from asphyxiation. And then the pumps sucking all that water out. And I know there were many members of the media who believe this will not stand, this will not be effective. But we just persevered and pushed on and grabbed every pump we could and sucked that water out hour by hour by hour. And they avoided the very ugly death of drowning, as the miners will also tell you, because we've gotten pretty close. They actually had the very difficult moment of saying, how would I be comfortable dying? I'll take just passing out as opposed to drowning, and that's why they put that curtain up down there. And finally, you might remember when we sent that rescue capsule down on the Saturday turned Sunday stretch of hours, and it worked 9 times and brought them up, so to speak. The 3rd time, they avoided a very difficult fate of death. In other words, the Pennsylvania effort was successful against all odds. And so, friends, I come here because of this compulsion. You come here because of this compulsion, and just the need to be among peers, because you know it was extraordinary. And so many of us have dealt with the life and death dimension of this experience. It's really, for the adults I'm sure, it's what brings you here. Because we know in mining life, it's often the more dire outcome. That's the reality. Where can you gather and contemplate that all lived when usually most die? And I will tell you, to finish up, one of the great drivers in all of it, and I'm often asked, how come it was a matter of staying on the job? And I would often say, it's the job of a governor, too, to drive the effort and to stay on the job. But think back what happened 11 months earlier, when Flight 93 just crashed into the Shanksville spot, not far from here, and all died. For we who are involved in emergency response and managing crisis and responding to crisis, whether they're volunteer firemen and they're here, whether you fly a helicopter or deploy for DEP or UMSHA or the Navy SEALs, and even the president who called me that Saturday at that abandoned Giant Eagle just down the road where the media center was. We are driven by a basic interest of helping, wanting to be successful, to rescue. And we didn't have it on September 11th. It was not possible. They had all perished. And you know exactly of what I speak. And so we come here on those warm summer days in July of 2002 and asking the good Lord, and I know I did in my own way, help us on this one. Help us on this one. The country needs it. Pennsylvania needs it. Somerset County needs it. And we prevailed. We needed to write the emotional ledger. For many of us, that was the big driver. And he gave us success. And so, friends, to finish, you are part of the foundation in an emotional sense, and as you now know, in an organizational sense. If you feel strongly that there are lessons to be learned here for all of humanity in the years going forward, this must remain a special place in your hearts and your lives, not just for the Nine Minders, but for this Commonwealth and the entire world, because of what occurred here, right here. It may not happen again. Think about it. Most I and at Q Creek all lived. Spectacular, extraordinary, and I pray and hope it can happen again and again. Probabilities are no, but you were a witness to when it did. I thank you for being here and being such an important part of my life. I love you all. Thank you.